Hello and welcome, friends, listeners, and fellow parents. I'm your host, Margarita. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a very special guest, Cara, an author, a guide, and a mom who is transforming the landscape of parenting with her insights. Cara is the author of the book Softer Success, helping families everywhere navigate through challenges and burnout. So sit back, relax, or maybe even take out your notepad. Whatever your preference, get ready for this enlightening conversation with Cara. Let's explore more hues of the colors of parenthood. Hello, everyone. Today we have Cara with us. Cara, could you please introduce yourself and your story into motherhood?
Hello, everyone. My name is Cara. I am a founder and CEO of Softer Success. We look at managing well-being and burnout prevention in organizations, as well as business transformation, call it business alchemy. And my journey into motherhood started 13 years ago. My oldest daughter is now 13. Which was profound, actually, because so much shifted for me on a conscious level and subconscious level when she was born. And in fact, I even while being pregnant with my daughter, I was not aware of how much the outside and my internal stresses would have. And yeah, we can talk a bit about that today. But my journey into motherhood led just shifted so much. You know, this next generation is every time just completely blows me away. They are so connected to their inner wisdom if we allow them to, if we show them how. Yeah, that's it really.
Thank you. And because you just said generation, would you say that you see a lot of difference between when your mom were when you were growing up when you were as a child and your mom were parenting you, and now when you're parenting your own child?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, my mum had me when she was a lot younger. I had my children in my 30s. So that was already a change and a shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were, of course, already in a digital world. And I didn't grow up in a digital world. And so I grew up in the Netherlands. I was at school in Belgium. I was born in South Africa. I grew up walking on bare feet. And now I live in London, and my children are growing up in London, and it's very different. You know, so whenever I introduce them, I say, well, let's do barefoot. They're like, ew, you know. So I found a barefoot walking trail in the Netherlands that they did, which they loved. But yes, the differences are very different. I think what I grew up was maybe more old fashioned parenting of I'm the parent, so you're going to, you know, like, please listen to me, go, you can play outside as long as we know where you are. Quite a lot of freedom in terms of where are we and what are we doing. And I think we built up our own resilience really by being outside, playing outside with other kids, getting lost or things like this, you know, which kids of today don't have. And they have a different thing added on to it now, which is technology. So I feel like parenting now is actually a little bit more complicated. My parents did, I think, in my opinion, a great job. They're the best job they could with the knowledge that they had. And I really respect them for that because I know how hard parenting is. And so over time, as I've learned to learn a lot about ancestors and our ancestral things that we can inherit, ancestral patterns, family patterns that may not be particularly good, I decided along the line to unblock certain of those for my kids. And so that meant that I had to go in and do the work and actually go, well, what does parenting mean now? What is parenting to me? And it's been quite the journey because when you have your kids when they're very little, it's very different. I mean, I had a burnout when I was when my second daughter was born. So this was quite hormonally fueled. So she was 1 year old. And it was very much more a hormonal shift, burnout,
Mm-hmm.
as well as trying to do things in the old way. I want to be a perfect mum kind of thing, why that happens. It was very much a parental burnout. Uh, Obviously, I was back in work at the same time. But what I think really sort of made me want to do things differently is at that time, the burnout was almost an epiphany for me to go, okay, so does this mean that what I've learnt in terms of parenting, is that right? Is that right for this next generation? And I started to listen to my intuition better, our inner wisdom, our guide, our compass. And the more that the children become connected to technology, the more I've said to them, listen to your heart, listen to your tummy. And my younger daughter will make a joke about that because she'll go, my tummy is speaking to me and I am hungry. But it's not so much that, it's more like this is your compass. If something doesn't feel right, your heart and your gut will be telling you. Your intuition, the children are born with an innate sense of intuition, of inner wisdom. And once they start going to school, they start to learn programming. They start to learn, academic results are the best, Whereas I've actually said to my children, do your best, but I want to teach you other things as well. I want to teach you about breath. I want to teach you about how to regulate your nervous system. I want to teach you that how the power of listening to your heart and how to tune into your intuition. And what does that say? And I've had two reactions that are completely different. One follows that pathway, the other one doesn't quite, or is like, I don't know what you're talking about, mama, and I'm not going to go and move around, put crystals up in my room, and then she will stick them under her pillow sometimes. Now, I'm not saying that everybody needs to go that in, use crystals. That's a personal choice. What I'm actually what I wanted to share here today was almost what's happened with me is almost like a kind of breakdown of old styles of parenting, the
Hmm.
control, the you must listen to me, you have to do it this way because it's this way, academics are the important, this is important. And all the while, the children, in my opinion, are learning I'm not good enough, I disconnect, I need a dopamine hit from technology. And so what I've done with my children, and let me, for anybody listening, this is a learning, still it's a constant learning thing, isn't it? Parenting, you're learning with a flow the whole time. But what I've done is really actually said there's two sides, right? Don't forget to listen to your heart, don't forget to tune in to your intuition. It will always guide you if you really truly don't forget to go out into nature. Every moment that you have on technology, or any moment that you have, that you're feeling a loss of identity or belonging, you belong. Nature, you belong on this planet. You are important, you matter, you make a difference, you can make an impact, right? And by teaching them that, I'd love to see them just teaching them more of them that at school. You begin to see a sort of resilience come up, as well as questioning. And I think the questioning sometimes is quite hard. Like, why do you do this that way, or why has that happened? And I've actually gone and say, well, I've done that because that's the way I thought that was the right way, and I think that's what my mum did and my grandma did, and so
Hmm.
I did the same. But I'm glad you questioned it, because now I can look at it and go, I need to let this go. I don't think this is the right way for this generation, for the for now, right now, here on this planet, as we're seeing
Hmm.
consciousness evolving. They need to be able to develop their own consciousness, and we as parents can only allow them to empower them to do so. And that doesn't happen with control. And
Yep.
so letting go. But it's really hard. It's incredible to see how programmed we've been for many, many years. Yeah.
Yeah, but if we think about it, it's really obvious that we need to adapt to like new year every year basically, because people are
Mm.
living differently from when I was a kid, and I'm like I have still long process to go when I become a mom. And now when I'm living, I can see teenagers even living differently from when I was growing up. And also, because you mentioned that you have a also different cultural background, not only a generational thing, but would you say that this also is quite different because your kids are growing up in London and you've had such a different experience?
Yeah, so I grew up bilingually with, well, I had three or four languages because I was at school in Belgium and I was living in Netherlands, and but my husband is Spanish, so we live here in London, and so the children have got a mixture of things, and they're at school with children that have the same, right? That have, my daughter is friend with a girl that has a Polish dad and a Japanese mom, and so it's really beautiful to see how these different cultures are blending and actually, becoming friends and living together in harmony. And but I do think it's important to make sure that we help them understand where their sense of belonging is, right? Because in the past, people would grow up, maybe there would be one culture and they would be living in one place and they would know people from the same place. And I don't think that's happening in the same way anymore. So my husband and I thought, well, the best we can do is teach them what we love about the cultural bits, and then they will decide themselves where they feel they belong the most. They will decide. They will know, right? They will know that it doesn't matter if they've been born in one place and grow up in another. They will know where they feel they belong. Um, and that's why I like to say we're children of the earth, right? So Mother Nature will always know, will always recognize us. And so, yeah, so I think that's really interesting culturally, for them to learn different languages. I grew up with that as well, so I'm quite accustomed to it. And I think it made me really resilient in adapting to, if I was in, I was born in South Africa. I spent the first 5 years of my life there. So then I was, kind of introduced to Netherlands, and then I adapted. And it's not just the language, it's the culture, it's understanding. And I think that helps you become a little bit more open, to different cultures, right? And to understanding different cultures and to um, making a mix. And yeah, so I think that's a great question. Thank you.
And to adapt also to different cultures
To
and
adapt,
to
exactly.
understand them better, yeah.
Yeah,
Because you said that the different one difference that you've mentioned about your mom and you is that she had you when she was younger, and you had your kids in your 30s, right?
yeah.
Would you say that there is a stigma around having kids later, and did you ever experience or faced it?
No, well, some of my friends had kids a lot earlier, and some of them had them even later. So I think it seemed to be like, just for me, it was just I didn't find the right person to have the kids with until I was in my 30s. My daughter has very openly said, by after tuning into her intuition, have showed her how to meditate, how to get into the alpha brainwave state. And she won't do that consciously. She may just before she goes to sleep or after. I've showed them many different techniques, like, havening to help them self soothe when they go to sleep. And but she woke up one morning and she said, I had a dream. I know that I want to have children at a younger age, or something like this, right? So that was quite funny. But I don't think there was any stigma around it. I think there were health issues around it more than anything. I'm pretty sure that that's why, post the birth of my second daughter, my hormones went more haywire because I was in my 30s, right? And they were going, okay, ooh, and then you go and hit perimenopause and whatever. So you hit perimenopause and the kids are still younger. So there's that challenge as well. And I talk about that a lot as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges, and I think that's one of the factors. Like being a woman, you have to think about your health and to calculate when do you want to have kids based on that as well. Yeah, and because you said parental burnout, I'm quite curious to learn more about that if you're okay with sharing. And
Yeah.
how did you realize, like, when did you start working after you had your second child?
I started work about 9 months after. And by then my hormones were a little bit, and I was thinking, this is strange. I don't quite feel myself. But what really started to happen, and these are signs of parental burnout, and this is actually a thing. I have a whole course on it. I've written about it. There's a lot of research done on it. Is that we start to struggle with the parenting duties, right? So I remember getting to a point where I was giving and then you feel really, really guilty, right? Because you're like, I brought these wonderful young people into the world, and I find it really difficult to give them, around the bath time every night. I feel like I'm getting burnt out of this time because this is their moment. They get super excited and they're not quiet, and I'm mentally tired. And so those were the first signs. And this is actually quite normal for a lot of parents, right? And they have done research on that. They call this the witching hour. It's almost this hour of complete and utter energy overdrive. Also, depending on what they've eaten, I realize I started to change around diets, but um, before they go to sleep, because it's the last bit of energy that they need to get out before they go to sleep. But usually for the adults, that's the end of the day, especially if you've been in a working day. That's your end of the day. So you're coming into your wind down time, except the kids are not allowing you to wind down. So, you're sitting there going, whoa, this is tough. So there was that. And then, the day to day things of just caring for, uh, somebody that can't care for themselves yet. It's That's as it was a sign of parental burnout, because you can get to this point that, and I'll be really open about it. You think, okay, they're fully dependent on me. So it's now my responsibility, my duty to keep myself in the best optimum health. And that's another kind of pressure, right? To go, oh man, and trying to be as healthy as I can. And so I think we often put a lot of pressure on ourselves as parents too. Like, now I want to be the best possible parent. That was definitely me. I was like, now I'm going to be like super mom, and I will be fun with them, but I will also be teaching them, and I'm going to be doing this. So I basically put way too much pressure on myself, because when the hormonal shifts and changes came along, or when I just had a really tough day at work and I came home and, gave them the bath and sat there, and after a while of, the kids fighting and I was trying to go, okay, calm down, I would lose it. I would just, and then I would beat myself up about that for a long time. So I would feel guilty. And so I'd say those were our true signs of parental burnout.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of perfectionism in there too, wanting to be the perfect parent. And that was a big warning sign. And in fact, there's a guy that wrote a book. I need to look up his name, but that actually, as parents, it is important for us to fail. And I read this book and I was like, oh my gosh, I am trying to hold up so many balls that I'm not allowing myself to fail as a parent. And it is actually good for the children to see the parent fail, or to see the parent uh, not be great at some things, and actually own that. And I now own that. I'm like, yeah, I shouted. I'm only human. I lost, I tried, but I messed up. And you know what? It's okay to mess up. And as long as we learn and grow from it. And so that is helps them with their resilience, because otherwise what you're also creating is children that then also think they need to try to strive for perfection and put an enormous amount of pressure on themselves. So you can actually, by failing as a parent, you can take a bit of pressure off them. And so there were a couple of times that I purposely failed, and my daughter, I I kind of didn't have her whole full gym kit or something that she was, and she had to wear an old pair of socks or something like this, right? That um, she was like, I didn't have the right socks. I'm like, oh, okay, Mama forgot,
Mm-hmm.
and Mama didn't get it right, but that's okay, we'll that will work together to get that right next time. Instead of them kind of expecting you to have it right every time, because it's teamwork. And I say that to my children all the time. I say, yeah, we're working together as a team. It's not just, we're a team unit here. We are not just the parents with you. We are really working and learning together, and we're shifting our energy together, and we are helping each other together. And so I'd like you to pay attention that when you see somebody in this household that's maybe feeling a little bit tired, uh, step up, and step in, and let's see what we could do, even if it's giving a hug to that person or taking a plate or whatever, that's what, like, working as a team. And I said, this is what you need to learn as well as you go out there, into the world, whoever you're living with, right? And whoever you're working with, that's something that, and there's not always going to be one person in that team that's going to be doing everything. So I
Yeah,
hope
I
that's
think,
answered the question.
yeah, that was great. And I think also that once I realized that my parents are only humans, that really helped me to also give them permission to fail and be okay with that. And also, I felt like I can speak as a human as well, like
Mm.
equal. So I think it's a great point that you're doing here. Definitely. And this really sounded like burnout, because I'm aware of like what is burnout. The first time I'm discussing with someone what is parental burnout, but what you said, like what it's like, it makes a lot of sense. And would you say that a lot of people realize that? And because you said you're coaching that, are is there a lot of interest in that?
Around parental burnout.
Yeah.
And well, I think what I coach people with is what I call sort of energy. So energy reset, energy healing, so that we're at a space of um, living with the best possible energy, right? And that does mean, I suppose, that is a coaching on parental burnout prevention, because I coach people, I help people that are um, going that way, but also people that have gone through it, sort of to recover and build up different styles and ways of living. And we can all live with joy, no matter what. I'll give you an example of what I do now, right? So the if we notice we get into a state of frustration, which is very human, or anger, or complaining, right? And this happened to me the other day as I had a full day of work. My husband was away, and I came there, and the kids were on their devices, and there was a big mess in the kitchen, and I was like, started with complaining. And I realized I was complaining. I realized I'd stepped into, and my daughter went, "Why are you complaining?" I said, "Well, because I'm complaining." And thank you for pointing that out. And I say this to her sometimes as well, right? We'll ask each other the question, "Why are you complaining?" Because it will be like a trigger of, what is it that we need to do
Yeah.
to shift out of this, or shift the energy. And I realized, and I said, okay, Mama's just going out for a walk around the block, or just outside. When they were really little, I would just go stand outside of the door for a few minutes, right? And go look at the trees, take a breath, shake it out. And then when I came back in, I'd sort of reset my energy. And I said, you know what? We're not going to do any dishes. I'm not going to do that right now. What my intuition says is that we maybe all need to dance together. And so I just turned on some music, and we all danced, and immediately the energy was shifted, right? And so I think it's about being aware of that. And sometimes that works really well, and other times we're not. And one thing that I also realized is that I carried over some anger from my mother and grandmother, about parenting, about life, and also from my father. And I thought this one has been the most interesting one to let go of, because once we realize that some of the things that come up for us that we get irritated about or annoyed, or things that we say, or maybe not our stories, or maybe not ours, or maybe go back 2 generations, or traumas that we felt maybe go back generations before. And so I've done a lot of work on that, because I want my daughters will have their own work to do. We all will, but especially this is the generation that will have more issues with the climate, and there'll be things like that. So you want to teach them to not sit in fear and uncertainty, so we can rewire our neural pathways within 30 to 60 days. And I've worked with them on that, right? So I'm going, okay, they'll be like, oh, it's so hot. It's so hot. What if the earth's going to get scorched, And then we'll work on that and actually rephrase and going, well, the body knows how to regulate, and we're putting some things in action to help our planet. And what could we do? And step out of the fear and step out of the uncertainty. But obviously, if you go back a couple of generations, it's now become evident that, and this became evident to me, that we carry over things from our own parents, our great grandparents, even great great grandparents and before, on both sides. And there'll be certain things, that stories or beliefs, that may not be true from for you, but that may have come up before. So once I started delving into this work, because I really feel that we're the generation, so me as a parent need to heal myself and any ancestral things that are there on mind, body, and soul level, to allow our children to thrive in this world, right? They'll have their own things they need to look into, but they have more challenges, right? They've got the challenge of the climate, they've got the challenge of fear and uncertainty, they've got the challenge of more technology. So let's help them on their way, let's help them to become more conscious as best as possible. And so I've taught my children, for example, on fear and uncertainty around climate. It was one summer, it was really, really hot, and my daughter's saying it's so hot, and why is it so hot? And, is the earth getting destroyed? And, like this fear that came up, which we're seeing with a lot of young people. We did some research with Imperial College London, and, 59% of 17 to 27-year-olds are very worried about the environment most of the time. And so what we do know from neuroscience is that we can rewire our brains within 30 to 60 days. We can rewire our neural pathways. We can start to think and feel differently. And so I did this with them. I experimented this with them. And so every time repeating the same words as, it's safe. It's safe for me to live on this planet. I can stay cool. I can, there are measures being taken, Mother Earth is my friend, a lot of different things like that, so that they don't start getting fearful about what could happen. So we did that. And the best way of doing that is actually bringing them out into nature at the same time. Maybe not if it's super hot or, there's other climatic thing, but going out there and helping them understand how nature works, listening to nature, feeling into nature, taking them I did a forest bathing, and then I sort of showed them how that worked, and they'll resist it, but I always think that some bits will go in. And so there's that piece. But then the second bit was around some ancestral trauma. I think I mentioned that, my great grandparents or grandparents even were living through First and Second World Wars. So there was an innate fear around loss of life, fear around bombs, fear around lack of food. And sometimes that is some of those beliefs have carried over. And so I knew that there was time to sort of let go on some of that. I also, found out that my there was on one side of the family there was a betrayal, and somebody had taken money, and so there was a big thing on abundance, and so that also needed to be released. And so I really think as parents, the best the best thing we can teach our children and do for our children is help ourselves heal, and heal on every single level, right? It's yes, be in the best optimum physical and mental health, but there's a spiritual healing as well, that's also needed for this next
Mm-hmm.
generation to be able to thrive. And that's stepping away from, you only can do well if you succeed academically, and it's about making money and da 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 da. And you'll thrive in this world if you're going to be listening to your heart and listening to your inner wisdom and bringing the two together, right? The knowledge that you have, the stuff you're learning with your brain, with the things that you're also um, learning and with your body, and how to regulate your nervous system, and how to
Mm-hmm.
be connected spiritually to whatever it is that you choose that is for you. Um, and I think that's, to me, when I see them develop that, how to shift your energy, just like this example that I gave before. How do we shift our energy and shift out
Yeah.
so that we're not, how do we protect ourselves from energy of others, right? Because we all carry, the heart emits a much more powerful energy. Heart Matters done research on than the brain does. So where it depends, how is our heart, and I will often ask them that, how is your heart? Um, and then you get true answers, because children are really open and they'll tell you, and you don't, I mean, I think if we put a bunch of children in the room that haven't been programmed too much yet at school, and we put them in a room or out in nature together, and you go, okay, we've got a couple of world problems that we'd like you guys to resolve. The first one is around food, the next one's climate, whatever, and you put them there, they will have found the solution. Why? Because they're still innately tuned in to their inner knowledge, to their heart, their soul, that compass that before we get our programming. And so the ancestral piece doesn't always come up when they're younger. It can come up a little bit later. And that's why I've been quite keen on doing a lot of work around that,
Mm-hmm.
even resolving, like looking at getting better relationship with my own mother. And as you were saying, understanding my own parents, and, knowing that our parents always tried to do their best, and
Yeah.
the best in the knowledge that they have had. And we
Yeah.
will undoubtedly probably want to do it differently, or some ways the same and some ways different. And that's totally okay as generations change. Um,
Yeah. I think a really like a one word that strikes me while you were speaking is being aware, and it's really
mm,
hard to be aware, specifically with the story of like when you're frustrated, you find the dishes or whatever. Even when I come home, I try to not think of like if my roommate have done anything or something else, or if my mom calls me inappropriately. Sometimes I try not to think about this. So but it's hard to be aware and to realize, okay, I'm actually complaining in my head also, or like
mm,
getting frustrated over nothing, and then to try to refocus your energy, as you said,
yeah.
reframe everything. It's quite hard. It's such a process and a journey, as you already mentioned that.
Yeah, and being aware that of some things of hurt may not be yours, right? I remember getting upset by some things my dad said, and then I went into that and actually went, that's his hurt. That's not my hurt.
Hmm.
That's his hurt.
Yeah,
That's for
yeah.
his hurt. But our previous generations haven't looked into that. It's a very different generation that are, and that's totally fine.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So
Um,
awareness is,
yes.
aware of what's going on around you, aware, yeah, coming back to your joy. That's often what I will say to the children. It's like, let's find joy. There's always something to laugh about or have, even on a day that's not great, what can you find that brings you joy? And they'll get really, I mean, sometimes, and I will stay consistent with it, but I will ask questions at the dinner table. It's like, what are you grateful for today? And what has brought you joy? And my husband, who's not into that really that much, he'll be like, oh, here we go again. And I said, then I will bring out some scientific research. And I said, did you know what this actually does to our neurons when there is a whole group of people saying and thinking things they are joyful about? It immediately shifts the energy of wherever you are, or immediately, things that they're grateful for. So, why do you think that Taylor Swift concerts are so successful? It's because of the positivity and the learning that she's put in the lyrics, the energy that's put on stage, but of course the blending of people's positive energy together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you before my last question, because our time is getting by. Also, because you mentioned that you had this feeling that you want to be the super mom, the perfectionist about being the greatest mom ever, etc. And now that you're more aware and you're more aware, like where you come from, would you say you know the answer about why was that? Like, why did you have this idea that you need to be perfect when you're a mom?
It came from an innate sense of not feeling good enough as a child. I think, and sort of maybe even some pressures that we see nowadays in society.
Hmm.
I don't think social media helps us, right? Because other
Yeah.
parents, we as humanity do, even though it's not healthy for us, but we do compare ourselves to other people. So I would see other people, other moms, and I'd be like, oh, how does she manage all that? And I'm not. And so now I actually openly say I'm a recovered perfectionist as a joke. There's a total freedom in that. There is a total freedom in going, I goof up sometimes, and my kids are totally fine with that. And the fact that I mess up means they can too,
Yeah.
and they can too, and they can do that in their life, because this is how we learn. We don't learn necessarily from success. I think we learn from failure.
Hmm.
um, Failure is our biggest, we learn from failing. And if children can see that as well, there's nothing wrong with failing. um, it's actually a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, specifically in the burnout area, for people that are also perfectionists in the workplace or wherever. Failure is actually giving you comfort to go out there and get the best of you, and then you bring the consequences of failing, but it's not like of a consequence, a really grief consequence, I mean.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I see failure is maybe more a call from the heart, going, are you really connected to your true purpose? Are you really connected to your true sense of self? Or are you following somebody else's or some other person's program, or
Hmm.
society program? And I think that that's why failure is so good, because it made me realize, for example, that I was on somebody else's programming. It wasn't my true sense of self. It was, and I think for parents, I also want to say that sometimes that's tricky when you come together with another, with your partner, right? And you're parenting together, because you have different parenting styles.
Yeah.
So it's aligning on those different parenting styles, and also understanding in your partner that your style may be different to theirs, and acceptance on that. My partner and I, my husband and I, we've had many arguments around our parenting styles because we're very opposite. But I think sometimes that also brings a blend to the children. I would say, look, the different styles. You can choose what you want to take forward
Yeah.
yourself. It's like different styles of work, right? Be aware, like coming back to that awareness, that this is a choice for you. It's a freedom of choice. You don't have to follow one or the other. Follow your own true sense of self, your own true path. And the only way that people can keep following that is if you listen to your heart. keep listening to your heart, get into stillness. People are not in stillness enough. Children are not in stillness enough. That's why I take mine out into nature. That's why I will say every single moment you have on your technology and educate them about that. You actually need to combat that with moments of stillness or listening to music or, reading or other things that are bringing you just back. Music is really good for that. My kids just like listening to music, and that will bring them back to their
Mm-hmm.
heart and their soul.
Yeah. Okay, and that was beautifully said. I just started thinking that there are a lot of topics for another episode, but
Yeah, we can
as a
always do
last
another one.
question, yeah, and as a last question, it would be more like if I am a mom that is basically trying to really realizing now that I have the symptoms of burning out, like I love being a parent and I try effortlessly to be the best, but then I guilt trip myself because I just get I lost it all the time. What would your advice be to what is the next step to go beyond that?
Contact me. I'll help you. No, I'm making a joke, but yes, I am always available there to help parents via Softer Success, or But the next step would be deep breath in and out, hand on belly, hand on heart. What do I need right now? That's always what I say to every single parent. What do I need right now in this moment? And that can vary from anything to I need some love, I need some attention, I need some time for myself, I need some stillness, I need exercise, I need some food. What do I need right now? And that's not listening to the needs of others, is listening to your own needs. And the moment you start doing that, and that's not, selfish or anything, it's putting your own oxygen mask on first. It's just doing that. It's like doing right now, what is it that you need? And do that. um and breathe. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
And
you so
know
much.
that
That was
actually,
great.
that's what I want to say to all parents that are listening. You're doing a great job, no matter what, right? It's already an amazing thing to bring another life into this world. So however you're doing it, you're doing great. And stay, remember that.
That was beautiful, and I definitely agree with that. Thank you
That's
so
good.
much, Cara. It was a great conversation, and yeah.
Been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Margarita. It's been a real pleasure.